Good morning. How's it going, Jack? There we go.
There we go. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Where are you
Good.
calling from?
Kentucky. Middle
Oh,
of Kentucky.
nice, nice. Kentucky is one of those places that I don't really want to go, but I'll come visit.
Um, it's really pretty
Is it?
certain times of the year.
Yeah, I have some friends. Actually, one of my best friends kind of spent a decent amount of time growing up there, and then they moved around, moved over here. So cool, cool. So this is your second month of Praxis?
Yes, it is. You're in what month?
Technically, I skipped module 4, so I'm just going straight into module 5.
Okay.
But for purposes of the podcast, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and just give yourself a little bit of background?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I'm Jack. I started Praxis 2 months ago. I made that decision because I was going to go to college. Um, it's a basic story, just like a lot of other participants. I just really felt like it wasn't for me. I wanted something more hands-on. So I heard about Praxis my junior year of high school, and I decided to give it a shot. And so I took a little bit of a leap of faith, and now I'm very excited about where I am and where I'm headed. And I think this is going to be the best thing for me.
Awesome. Yeah. I had a little bit different experience. I never really planned to go to college, but
Mhm.
I sold insurance for a year and a half. And then I got into marketing after that. But in between there is when I decided, because I got accepted while I was still selling insurance. And I was like, no, I'm just not willing to go back in income. And then I quit and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do Praxis. I have not regretted it. It's pretty great. So,
And you are, I wasn't stalking you, but I was doing research.
yeah,
I looked
absolutely.
at your
That's the whole point.
website, and it's a really good website, by the way.
Thanks.
I You're not starting until 2020.
No, I started Praxis month. So this is my 5th month.
Not like the apprenticeship.
Oh, the apprenticeship. Yeah, yeah. So the apprenticeship, I'm not sure exactly yet.
Hmm.
I'm going into placement right now, and I could potentially start an apprenticeship next month, this month, January, who knows? Um, because I skipped month 4. It's not that I skipped it. It's just that I already had a project with my tea business,
Hmm.
so I'm just gonna do a few documentation pieces on that and call
That's
it
cool.
good. But the thing is, I'm trying to shoot for a job right away. I'm not looking to do an apprenticeship if possible. Obviously, that might
Mhm.
be the case. I'm open to it, but I'm just hoping for the best, you know?
That's really good. That's cool. So you you do marketing now,
Yeah, I do
but
marketing
you
sales.
said you know more about the sales aspect of things.
Yeah, I spent a year and a half doing sales, and I still basically am doing sales in addition to marketing. So I have a lot more knowledge of sales, but you can
Mhm.
feel free to ask me questions about whatever you'd like.
Okay. Um, when I was my senior year of high school and I was trying to figure out something other than college to do, I actually looked at insurance and real estate sales to get into, but then I decided to do Praxis instead. But if I hadn't done this, that would have been the route I would have taken.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I've just got a few questions. Um, what is sales to you? If you had to just describe it.
I would say sales is a transfer of belief from one person to another.
Um, people people say the trick to sales is not think of it as a product, but think of it as a solution that you're selling people.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
for me, um, I have to admit, I am like I sell everything. Okay, I sell
mhm,
ideas. I sell things that aren't actually. I'm not talking about like actually exchanging money. I just promote these things, right? For example, I'm a huge fan of Apple. I'm
mhm,
constantly telling people you need to get AirPods, you need to get Apple Watch, you need to get the new iPhone, blah blah blah. And I have zero like. I'm not going to get paid for that, but I
mhm,
love it, right?
mhm,
So that comes back to the whole idea of transfer of belief, right? It's transfer of belief. It's not exchanging of goods. I mean, it is, but it's transfer of belief because you're not going to sell it well unless you believe in it. And that's been true for me. Like there's
mhm.
multiple products when we had insurance that I didn't like them. I didn't think that they were helpful, so I wouldn't sell them. There was occasionally Sorry about that. Very occasionally there was a product that was only very like seldomly applicable. So I would once in a while sell those, but overall
Mhm.
I didn't sell things I didn't believe in.
If you had to pick a favorite part of sales, like anything, what would it be?
Um, well, specifically speaking, when I was in insurance, I loved being able to sit at the table and with them and just go over, figure out things because let's be honest, most people's finances are a total mess. So I
Mhm.
was able to help them go through that and essentially bring clarification to them and help them to find products that could fill in the gaps that were missing on the way to their goals. Um, but overall, like in general, so no matter what you're selling, I think my favorite part of sales is constantly going to networking events and just meeting um, new people, having lunch with them, getting to know their stories because everybody's got a story and I just love to hear it. So I love making connections, and I also love making connections because my first mentor taught me that connections are the number one asset in business,
Mhm.
and that is so true. I've seen it happen over and over again, and I just really enjoy it.
I I put my first um, choice as marketing for my apprenticeship role currently, but sales is definitely something that I find interesting. I think the social aspect of it is interesting. I don't know anything about it because I haven't done it, but um, the net you were talking about the networking events. What type
Yeah.
of events would that be?
So for me, that includes pretty much a ton of. We have a very, very active chamber of commerce here in
Hmm.
the Wassa area, and it would be attending those things, going to banquets, and um, being at all the ribbon cuttings, just being present, and people see your face, especially. So like what I do, and you could do this too. So regardless of if you go into marketing or sales, networking is important. Okay. And no matter what you do, sales is always going to be the center of how you succeed. It's the core of how you succeed because I didn't get this job as a marketer because I knew how to market. I
Hmm.
basically I still am a newbie at marketing. I have a lot of ideas, but the point is I got this job because I was able to sell myself and I presented myself well. And that I got this job also through networking, right?
Hmm.
I went to a thing, I met a guy, talked to him for 5 minutes. He calls me a month later and says he wants to hire me.
Okay.
So um, the point is, can you restate the question again, just so I make sure I'm not getting too far off topic?
Uh, what what type of events would be
Okay, yeah.
social?
So yeah, some of the one I met this guy at my current boss was actually a Christian event for men called Leading with Power. So we just meet once a month. Actually, that's coming up
Hmm.
pretty soon here, and we have lunch and we hear a speaker and we just learn more about our faith. And that's where I met him. And the other one was a ribbon cutting. There's just all kinds of all of those types of events. So I'd say mainly ribbon cuttings. Just get involved with the Chamber of Commerce and be present and meet all of the people there. Try to meet the people who are influential in your city. And if you can impress them, they're gonna share the love and be like, hey, I want to introduce you to Jack. He's this young man who's gonna be a star in our community, and that's gonna help you tremendously. It's gonna be amazing.
So if you were to relocate, say Praxis, next week they're like, "Hey, we're gonna call you out. We have a job for you in another city, Los Angeles, maybe, and it sells." How would you start from the ground and build those connections if you know nobody?
Well, I would say that, depending on the company I'm with, I would, if they're not already a member of the local chamber, it's going to be harder for a bigger city like that. So I would probably make sure they're a member of the chamber, and I
Hmm.
would try to become involved with it. I would get involved with some kind of local meetups regarding real estate agents, or it really depends on what I'm selling, of course, but um, to a degree, I'd want to get to know the local real estate agents, some of the local bankers. Um, I would focus on a very small area at first because then I would, get really close with these people and then get involved in some organizations. I would probably, because I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus, I
Hmm.
would probably go and obviously transfer my council so that I was down there, go to their meetings, have them introduce me to people, and just start having lunch with people. And then before you know it, they're gonna be like, hey, I know this guy that might help you out, and at first it'll be me at their mercy because I won't know anybody. But the
Mhm.
thing is, once you get to know, after 2 or 3 months of doing this, you get to know people, and then you're like, hey, you have a client or something that's looking for a specific service or another person that they need to connect with, a banker, who knows. You say, hey, I got the guy for you. Let me send you an email and I'll introduce both of you. So then your networking can really become a true asset.
Okay.
That's a good point,
So
by the way.
you do marketing now.
Mhm.
What is the biggest difference between doing sales and doing marketing?
There's not a whole lot of difference, to be honest, but I think that with marketing, you spend more time trying to figure out how to get people. Um, it's difficult because sales is one on one. Like you're there, and then you use your certain tactics, and you can get them to say yes to your product ultimately. Marketing is two different. So there's marketing, advertising, and branding. My boss always breaks it down into those three. So branding obviously is Coca-Cola just constantly blasting their content to the world,
Mhm.
making it everywhere as much as possible. Marketing is trying to get typically a certain information piece out, like for a restaurant, oh, we updated our menu, blah blah blah, we have
Mhm.
a special coming up. Whereas advertising mainly is like calls to action typically. So I would say the main difference is that with marketing, you have to spend a lot of time coming up with new creative ideas, whereas sales, it's pretty much the same thing every time. You just get better at it as you go along. That's my best description of it.
That's a good description. What does the day to day look like if you go to your job in the morning to when you get off at night? Like an average day for sales, what would that look like?
So when I was in insurance, what it would be is I typically would be up pretty late because I hosted a lot of my appointments at night. So I would get up a little bit later and then go to work. I had an office actually. I worked out of my boss's office, and I would make some calls, send some emails, get my files ready for the meetings I had scheduled. After about a year of doing it, I didn't really make a whole bunch of cold calls because I just knew a lot of people, and I had like I don't know 50 to 100 people on a list that were this close to buying or setting a meeting with me. So I would just constantly recycle through those. I didn't have to bring in many new people, which I would, but I would bring in, people I knew already, people that weren't already part of the organization. So I would, contact my cousins or friends of mine that I would, thought could use some. So I did very few calls at that point. But yeah, then I would go. A lot of times I'd have some kind of networking thing, maybe in the morning or in at lunchtime. Maybe I'd grab lunch with somebody, and then typically like 3 o'clock ish, and then 5:30 and 7:30 I'd have meetings. Not every night. Every night's different. Obviously, depends on your scheduling abilities. But I would host those. Not host. Conduct those meetings, get the data I needed, and then I would present solutions to their problems and make sales and all kinds of things. It involves a lot. That's why I liked insurance, and I think if you're ever considering it, it's not a bad idea because you learn everything
Mhm.
depending on what kind of company you're with. In my position, I had to take care of everything. There was no secretary to help me out with paperwork. There was none of that. I had to do the marketing for myself. It was all me. So you learn a lot.
People, when I've talked to anyone about sales practices, we've talked about it and I've read about it. And, they always talk about the freedom that comes with it.
Yep.
In your experience, how much independence and freedom comes with that role?
So are you talking within work or personally?
Personally.
So I would say it depends on your organization. Um, there's a lot of companies that have, okay, this is your quota. You got to meet your numbers, blah, 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 blah. Do this or you're getting fired. And that's how it is in a lot of organizations with
Mhm.
sales people. But once you gain respect and once you gain success, then you can pretty much do what you need. As long as you're as long as your boss is happy with you, essentially, right? So maybe you know how to tell good jokes or whatever. But
Mhm.
the point is, it becomes pretty free because you can make really good money in sales typically. There are people who I know who are the best salespeople in the world, but they're selling products with very little commission. And if I were to see them work as hard as they do in the business as they do with insurance, they'd be making 3 times as much money. Um, so if you do pick a sales role, make sure you pick one that's worth it actually. Um, but I would say that there was a lot of freedom with it because I could choose my schedule anytime I wanted. I could go, visit my family out an hour from here. I could, take a trip. I just had to make sure that I got ahead of my quotas. Um, and it's very nice with insurance because it's the commission is typically spread out over years. It doesn't come all at once when you sell a policy. So yeah, there's a lot of freedom, but obviously you have to make your boss happy, and that's important, right? And it also depends on the organization. I know that there's a lot of bosses out there who are um, not really fun to work for or
Mhm.
work under, I should say. Um, but there's a lot that are really good and they actually care about your success, and you want to try to find one of those. Somebody who really knows their stuff, because especially at a young age, I got lucky. My boss, he knew his stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have succeeded as well because I wouldn't have known.
This is a two-part question. What is um, the most important skill that helped you with sales that you brought into sales? So you had before, you brought in. And then what's the most important skill you learned while working in sales?
Um, so the skill that I had I think the most important one that I had brought into it would be optimism, I think.
Mhm.
Um, sometimes it's a little too, it was not the best thing because sometimes I'd be like, oh yeah, they said they want to buy, we're gonna meet next week, and then turns out they were really just trying to get me to leave. So I had to learn how to understand the difference between somebody just BSing to get me out of the door
Mhm.
versus somebody being serious, and that took me a while. But it kept me motivated, right? I never got really too down on myself. I was like, oh yeah, it's okay, optimistic. I see the goodness that could come. So I'd say either optimism um or personality, but I'll get to the personality part in a second. So and I think for the biggest thing that I learned would be, man, there's a lot, but I would say it has to be um either using your hands. I do this all the time now, right? Use your body language when you're talking. I didn't really do that before. I did it a
Mhm.
little bit, but that was drilled into me. Speaking slower, even though I talk fast still, you would not believe how fast I spoke before. I mean, I had to slow down a lot. Um, I guess it would probably come down to kind of acting. You've heard of Columbo, the detective. So kind of
Yeah.
the skill, I guess, would be the most important one that helped me succeed was the ability to be like a detective and to
Mhm.
asking questions, be like, okay, when they say this, what do they really mean?
Mhm.
And I could do this where I would have 30 minutes, 40 minutes into the meeting, or not even, probably about 30 minutes into the meeting, because you kind of build rapport, BS a little bit. Then you go into gathering information, but you have to go very, very easy into it. If you just ask them, hey, how much money do you make per year? They're gonna be like, get the heck out of my house. Um, so I would ease into it, and by after like 30 minutes, I could typically tell you a lot of things, such as how much they made per year, both spouses, how much they had in retirement, what kind of insurance they had, approximately what their possible retirement date was. I could tell you a lot of financial information and typically how diversified they were because I got good at in that specific field knowing what they meant when they would say certain things and also being able to do really quick calculations in my head without actually having to write it down, about a number of things and the way they would answer. The way they answer typically dictates, yes, they have money, yes, they know what they're doing, or they think they have money and know what they're doing, but they really don't. So yeah, I think it has to do with my optimism was what I brought in, and optimism / personality, because people just liked me. I was able to connect with people, and I still am to this day. I connect with people very well, and that has helped me tremendously. And then the ability that I learned, or the skill I learned, would be um, to be a detective, kind of, and figure out what they really mean.
Yeah, that's really interesting and a good way to put it. I think that a detective definitely, and I didn't really think of that, but reading people, that's probably really important
Yeah,
when it
because
comes to.
it really comes down to the fact that you only, most of the time on harder products to sell, you're only going to get them to buy when they tell you this, this, and this, and this. And you can then in your mind remember all that and then be like, hey, you told me this, 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 and this, and this. So therefore, I have the solution because you want to accomplish this. I have the solution because you told me it. Because if you put it back in their own words, it's really hard for them to say no. And I think this is true of so many. I mean, I think it's also true for lawyers at least because when you're in the courtroom, it's like, hey, you said boom, 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 boom. Therefore, it's a slightly different kind of sales process, but it's still using their words against them basically.
So you've talked about your connections, even your family, your cousins have been some of your connections, and your friends. And what is an appropriate way to approach someone that you are friends with without scaring them or making them feel really uncomfortable, and not burning bridges really, but just like making them reluctant to talk to you? Because like people have told me like they didn't want to get into sales because they didn't like to sell things to people. They didn't like to ask people to buy things from them. They felt bad about that. So how would you approach that? Um,
Well, here's how I would do it typically. I would see my cousins because I have a lot of cousins, and I would see them on a here and there basis. I'd be like, hey, we should really sit down sometime. I sell insurance now. It'd just be cool to go over the stuff and see if I can save you money. Because the thing was, I wasn't just there to try to sell them something. I wanted to sell them something.
mhm.
But my point of meeting with them was that I believed so much in my product. I still believe in my product to this day. That I could go there with 100% confidence, knowing that if I get a chance to meet with them, and if they do what I suggest, I will 99% of the time have something that I can help them with. So let's sit down. And I know a lot of people said that because I tried to recruit a number of people to sell insurance
Mhm.
when I was there, and they're all like, oh no, I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to be like that. It's totally fake. Anybody can be a salesperson if they want to, is number one. And second, there's not really that much stigma that comes with it. I know that there were sometimes people um, I felt were like trying to avoid me because I was an insurance person, but honestly, that was all in my head. There's normal people. They know I'm a person too. And yeah, they know that there's a chance I'm going to try to ask them, hey, you said we were going to meet next week and you never got back to me. Like, oh, yeah, sorry about that. They're busy. Most of the time it's all in your head. The person doesn't call you back. They port you or whatever. You never know what's going on in their day. It could be that their dog just pooped on the floor. Their baby's sick. Like it could be so many things. Their world is not you. They have more things to worry about than you. So if you ever go into sales, just remember that it's not about you. They have so many things going on. Don't let it get to you.
That's really it's a good way to put it. Um, I think you've touched on this because you talked about you being optimistic, but your personality, what about that makes you good for sales? Because you seem very optimistic, upbeat personal, not very afraid to just talk to people. And I've gotten that in the past 20 minutes we've been talking. And I
Mhm.
think, what would you describe about yourself, about your personality that makes you good for sales?
Um, I would say that I've been able to defeat a lot of, not all of my self-doubt, but I've been able to defeat a lot of it. And as a result, I've just learned, especially when I was in insurance, it's different every role you go into. I've noticed that with the new role that I'm in, with this steel sales, it's the same thing, but it's slightly different because it's a different situation. So therefore, your mindset is different. But when I got to a point where I was doing well with insurance, I was not afraid to talk to people because I knew that, the worst that can happen is they hang up on me or they tell me to leave, or maybe they even get mad at me when I'm at an appointment. But it doesn't matter. There's a whole bunch more clients out there I'm gonna keep going to. So, not really worrying too much about like those fears in your mind would be one of them. I think that my ability to connect with people comes from, so that's part of the personality part. But what it really comes down to is the fact that I'm willing to tell anybody my story. I'll pretty much tell
Hmm.
anybody 90% of my story. And it's a pretty gruesome story at times, right? There's lots of things that most people they would never want to talk about, like something like that. But I don't mind it because to me, it's just all everybody has a story that's similar. It's just that most people, for some reason, think they shouldn't share it because it's going to make people think badly of them. So, ability to connect through being personal and opening up first, right? Because that's something that psychologists do is that if they have a hard time getting somebody to open up, they will tell their version of the story,
Hmm.
or their personal experience, um, and that's where you build trust. So one thing that has been said, I'll cite a review that was given to me in my when I created my pitch deck was
Hmm.
despite Silas's youth, he incites trust or something like that. I can't remember the exact words of it. Inspires trust or something like that. So basically, I'm super honest. Um, being a young person, I make sure to I would dress appropriately, so get a nice suit. Um,
Hmm.
I would carry myself well and speak out. Versus a lot of young people. I mean, I just did my podcast on this the other day. The bar is so low. Nobody knows how to dress nicely. Nobody knows how to speak up. They're afraid to sit in the front row. I mean, anything. You just go down the list. And because that's how it is, we have it so much easier because we can impress people. As soon as they know our age, like, oh, wow. Like, a lot of times people would be impressed by me. And then they'd find out how old I am. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, I thought you were 25 or 26. Like, you're only 20 or 19 at the time. And then you gain even more respect in their eyes because like, wow, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I hope that answers the question. Sometimes
So I know we don't have time for it on here, but you talked about your story being interesting. I know you have a lot of podcasts and media out there. Is there somewhere I could check that out?
yeah, so my website has the basic version of my story, and I think
Hmm.
um I post everything I write on Medium. So
Hmm.
I don't post it on my blog because it doesn't quite look right. I haven't figured out how to fix that yet. I also just it takes too much time to post on my blog, so I post it on Medium. You can find my stuff on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I post all of my blog posts on there, and you can find my Medium username, and then go to some of my older stories. Um, but yeah, I'm always willing to do more podcasts and talk with people. I love having conversations. So
Okay, so the last question I have written down is for someone interested in sales or someone kind of on the fence, like a borderline, someone in Praxis, a participant who's looking for the different role types and what they want to do. What would you tell them?
I would say that no matter who you are, whether or not they're deciding or whether or not they're on the fence about it, every person should do a sales role for at least 6 months. And I mean,
Mhm.
I would say more than 6 months because when I decided to do insurance, I had committed in my mind to 2 years. It ended up being a year and a half. But it was at a point where I was like, just a bunch of things happened. I was like, okay, this is time for me to move on. God had kind of showed me that it's different
Mhm.
now. Move away from this. Um, I think do it. If you're not sure, do it. If you're not even thinking about it, still do it because sales is the number one importance. And I don't mean sleazy salespeople. I mean, I'm talking about like get a job. I think insurance is a really good opportunity in a good way because you can it's one of those things where you need to become knowledgeable in something. So you're gonna gain confidence. You're gonna be helping people, right? I did life insurance with people. So there's different types of insurance, but life insurance specifically is hard because it's a hard topic. Um, but you're helping people and then if you don't care about them, you won't make sales. So you develop an ability to care. Um, but I think that the benefits you learn from doing sales are so big because you understand how to communicate with people. You get a hang of people trying to be dishonest with you, and then you learn how to figure out what they want anyways. You learn how to stack arguments. You learn how to present yourself well. I mean, everything. You basically learn how to talk, which is also
Mhm.
true, and listen. But any interview you're ever going to go into, you're going to probably have a one-on-one interview at some point. And if you just sit here, like, slouching and kind of like, quiet and stuff, it's not going to go so well. But if you're like, hey, nice to meet you, I'm Silas, like, there's no sense in hiding who you are because your personality is your biggest asset.
Mhm. So, would you say that sales would be out of I think they have four roles: marketing, sales, operations, and technical. Would you say sales would be the one to go into?
I think it really depends. I recommend people do it, but
Hmm.
if you really don't want to, then don't do it because that's
Hmm.
the whole reason. Like I went into sales, I had never. You have to remember, I never, ever thought I would ever be a salesperson.
Hmm.
And my old boss, he had offered me the position. I was 18 at the time. He said, this will teach you a lot. You're going to mature a lot. Blah blah blah. Gave me a whole list of reasons, including money. And I was like, sure, let's do it. I could use some money. And what ended up happening was part of my story is that I went into it. I came from a pretty poor family. Went into it thinking, oh, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna make lots of money. And it didn't start out that way. It was very rough at the beginning. And then I got to a point where one month, my biggest month, I closed like I think it's 36,000 of commissions. So I would have
Hmm.
made that much commissions had everything gone through, which typically there's a case here and there that will get kicked out because of health reasons. So if all of that would have closed and gone through, I would have made $36,000 within the next year,
Hmm.
just from that one month. Um, and so these big checks started rolling in, and I was like, I'm not happy. I was really very unsatisfied. And I think it came from a fact that when I went into it, my goal was once I make this much money, once I make 50,000 is what my mind said. If I make over 50,000 a year, I'm gonna be happy.
Hmm.
So I got to 50,000, and I was like, still not happy. So I had to fix something inside of me. It had nothing to do with the money. It had to do with the fact that um, I was missing something inside of me, and I still think I am to this day. I'm trying to search for it. I think we all
Hmm.
are young people, but I think you should follow your gut. I mean, that's something I've been trying to live by for the past 6 months, and it's been working for the big decisions in my life. But I kept realizing that I totally forget to use my gut in the small decisions, and
Hmm.
I've had to deal with so many problems because of it, because I didn't follow it. So follow your gut. If you really want to go into marketing, do it. But I think that no matter what, you're never gonna lose. You're young. What are you, 18?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you're young. We're young. We have literally so many years to figure this out, and there's no downside to learning sales. You're young. If you make low commissions your first few months, it's fine.
Hmm.
It's going to benefit you no matter what if you go into sales. Marketing is good too, but most people, from what I understand, when they go into marketing nowadays, there's so many marketers that you end up doing a combined role. It's marketing and sales. So regardless of what you do, you're probably going to be doing sales at some point.
So to wrap this up, um, is there anything else you would like to say? It's an open platform.
I would say my biggest thing for my self-promotion right here is people need to have compassion. If the whole world had more compassion, kind of like Gary Vee says,
Mhm.
it would be a much better place. And I think that especially young people need to band together and remember that, like, we're not alone. It's so easy to get lost because we have our phones. Like,
Mhm.
we have, in my opinion, I just wrote about this yesterday. We have a society that created back in, the boomers. They created this idea that, they had all these grandiose plans and these, movements that they made, not really thinking what are the repercussions going to be. just
Mhm.
just the immediate, freedom kind of thing. Then they promoted that. Then the Gen Xers kind of started to go along with it and implemented it. Then the millennials, solidified it and grew up in it to a degree. And now us Gen Z kids and Zoomers, we're growing up in this stuff. And as we can see, the results are so bad. I cannot tell you how many people I know, how many young people who have terrible situations at home. Their
Mhm.
parents are drug addicts or just people who are, they don't care. They don't care about their kids and they don't understand, right? And especially the boomers, and nothing against boomers. I love my grandparents and all that stuff. This is my fear of talking about it, because I know at some point an employer is gonna be like, oh, he hates boomers, we're not hiring him. But the point is, we have these phones now, okay? And I think that these are amazing tools. I am not one to say that we shouldn't have phones, because if I had just a phone, I could make $100,000 a year. That's all I need, because that's the power of it, right? But
Mhm.
we that they're trying to tell us, oh, like, you don't get it, like, you why you spend so much time on your phone, like, just grow up and all this stuff. They've never been raised in a world where all of this technology exists, where our parents, they don't care about us because they were taught that it doesn't matter, it's just about money, and, like, they weren't taught these things. So as a result, we have so many issues in the world. And I ask that everybody just try to be compassionate to people and try to understand everybody else. If we just spent 20 minutes a day, or 5 minutes when we see somebody that we know, and just have a conversation with them. It doesn't even have to be face to face. FaceTime them, call them, whatever. People need to be listened to. And
Mhm.
that's what's causing so much stress, because there's so many things that are packed deep inside of us and they're just buried. And as a result, someday they either go through their lives living like zombies and having no emotion, or someday all of that emotion explodes and then a whole bunch of problems are caused because people are hurt, um, cars are crashed, whatever. Like, there's so many things. And I just encourage people to not be afraid to fix those things, because we all have them, and try to find true friends that are going to really help you grow in the way you're trying to grow. So,
That's really interesting. It's deep.
thank
I like it. Well, it's been 30 minutes. I don't want to waste too much of your day. Thank you for letting me talk to you. It was really interesting. You got a lot
Yeah, no
to.
problem. And
You
don't
got a
don't feel
lot.
like you're wasting my time. This is part of my day too, is podcasting. So,
Mhm.
but anyways, hey, thanks so much, Jack, and we'll stay in touch and let me know how it goes for you with Praxis.
All right, definitely. Good luck to you.
Yep. God bless.